the guys from Gorham Street, Branch Street, I can remember them telling us, you know, we would come in and go to 2 or 3 multiple alarm fires in that neighborhood at night. So the area behind Keith Academy condos where Maycom and the credit union, and Maycom's actually expanding there now, that area was all tenement housing, and it was really going up in the 60s and 70s. As a matter of fact, I have the notes that were found in a closet at headquarters. There's notes of that the officers of all those companies were asked to write down the number of fires that they responded to in those areas, and those handwritten notes were actually used as part of the justification to wipe out that neighborhood. So it's kind of interesting, the little bits of history that you find. You know, it's an original document that the guys had to go through the logbooks and by hand copy down all of those addresses that they went to for those fires that justified getting that funding. So it is interesting, you know, what would have happened. Even when they tore down the section of Little Canada where UMass Lowell's dormitories are now, they were massive, massive wood frame building. I mean, you know, like 4-story blocks that would go from like where Suffolk is all the way up to past the Faux Star, all made out of wood. And they just bulldozed them, and they actually, a lot of the debris was just burned. They just made these massive piles, and they just burned all the debris and then buried it. If you go on, I talk about Facebook a lot, but it's a great tool. If you go on Facebook, there's a group. I don't know if it's the Downtown Lowell photo group or what, but there's a great photo series on the demolition of Little Canada. If you can check it out, there's some really interesting photos. And there were quite a few streets over there that were wiped out where there were fires, you know, in all that residential housing. And it's just lost to history, you know. We would probably have to find them. We'd have to go back through logbooks. Fortunately, we still have most of them, but they're not all in terrific shape. So.
Jason,
yeah.
Are you saying that those buildings were taken down on purpose?
On purpose, part of urban renewal, yep. So everything that you see where the brick housing is on the other side of Market Street, that was all taken down just about post-World War II for veterans housing. It's now Lowell Housing Authority property, but everything on that side, it was all wood frame, huge multi-family and tenement blocks. All right. This other parking lot over here between the Alcara building and I believe it's a grocery store. I always knew it as the Batter Bank grocery store because I had to investigate all the dumpster fires someone lit back there when I was in fire investigation. In that location, April 25th, 1971, 5:30 p.m., the block stretched that entire lot, 508 to 544 Merrimack Street. There were 5 businesses and 50 left homeless in the general alarm fire. There was so much mutual aid called to this fire, they actually had to have Boston come out and cover some of the suburbs because the suburbs had sent us so much help for this fire. Every community within a 20-mile radius sent Lowell help. Think about that. 20-mile radius, everybody sent us at least one piece of equipment. 150 firefighters on scene. The chief at the time, Walter Kane, called it one of the most frustrating fires of his career. The building had a steakhouse, a bridal shop, hardware store, a furniture store, and at the same time that this happened, there was a second fire at 630 Merrimack Street, so just further up the street, very likely caused by embers from this original fire that had to be handled. So it began in the cellar of the LeBlanc furniture store. Firefighters were never able to enter that portion of the building, and it collapsed 6 hours later. Crews were on scene until 10 a.m. on Sunday. I'm trying to remember how many days later that was because I didn't write it down. But it was the second, at the time they called it Plan B mutual aid. They had Plan A, Plan B. Plan B was the really big one that would be used for fires like the mills and things like that. Just after this time frame in the early 70s, they came up with what we now call the 10 alarm card system. So there's 10 alarms of mutual aid designated for each city. So there are districts. We're district mutual aid district 6. The district around Boston is called Metro Fire. Lawrence has their own district. But essentially what it does is it lays out which community sends which apparatus all the way up to 10 alarms. So that's the difference between 1972, they just called it Plan B. It was send everybody within 20 miles. And in 1987, they had a 9-alarm fire that was designated. Each community would send what help at what time. And that's still the system that we use today. It's very unusual for us to go beyond 5 alarms these days, but it does happen. We still have fires that are that big. Also, in addition to Boston having to cover some of the suburbs because we had called so much help, Boston and Worcester covered Lowell.